Hello, and welcome to this video. Today, I'm going to be discussing the topic of asexuality. Before we start, I just want to note that in this video, there will be no unnecessary, inappropriate, and suggestive footage or implications regarding the topic of orientation and sexuality, but the actual content may be difficult for the younger audience to understand. Also, just a warning, this topic is quite controversial, and people will likely have conflicting viewpoints based on what is being presented. Everyone has different experiences, and will basically only be able to scratch the surface regarding the matter. But I just want to let you know that I'll be doing my best to relay everything I can based on what I have personally learned. And my hope is that you can relate to at least a small part of it. Alright then, let's begin. Asexuality, one of the many spectrum labels within the vast establishments of the LGBT community, is a relatively understudied and underappreciated type of sexual orientation. This is mostly due to the fact that many asexuals, including myself, find it difficult to acknowledge that something they have never personally experienced before, in this case sexual attraction, actually exists. In my opinion, it's perfectly reasonable to be utterly baffled, or to be completely dismissive of the whole idea for that matter, when learning something in your life isn't equated to what is considered normal for the first time. And this is also true for anything outside of this specific topic as well. It's honestly quite a considerable amount to take in. In many cases, individuals unfamiliar with the LGBT community are also oblivious to the differences between the separate categories of attraction, most notably the romantic and sexual attraction types that determine the orientations of a person. Despite the rapidly innovating ideas of the modern world and the spreading awareness regarding the existence of different sexualities, because of this common lack of knowledge, especially within the older generations, individuals are constantly being denied their proper orientation status by the people around them, even from their close families and peers. Simply put, the worldwide oblivion to the basic definitions of attraction in relationships proves to act as a barrier between the honest perceptions of those considered as minorities. This may very well be another obstacle to timely sexuality-linked research being done in the future. While asexuals may not have as much of a historical complexity in comparison to the discrimination and suffering other orientations have faced in the past, hence the justified pride and awareness of homosexuals, bisexuals, etc., it's still important to note that asexuals carry various burdens as well. From the smaller insecurities of just being considered different from others, to the horrendously painful feelings of being denied by a cherished individual or community, we all face our own unique obstacles throughout our daily lives, and it becomes increasingly important to spread the word that our place in this world indeed exists for each and every one of us, even during our times of intense adversities when it seems almost impossible to find. Sometimes we all just need the confirmation that there are people with similar stories and backgrounds. With this in mind, I sincerely hope this study and this video could become of use to anyone potentially necessitating it in the future. So let's start with the basic question. What does it mean to be asexual? Asexuality is often defined as a lack of sexual attraction, but what does this really mean? This simple definition on its own wouldn't provide a sufficient enough explanation to anyone learning about asexuality for the first time, nor would it immediately resonate with unassuming asexuals who may have just stumbled upon the topic. Well, it certainly didn't for me at least. The problem is, the majority of the human population is unable to pinpoint what sexual attraction exactly is on their own. Asexuals have never experienced sexual attraction throughout the entirety of their lives. I mean, how are you supposed to understand something that you've never felt before? And it's usually confusing for the majority of allosexuals as well, because most of them also experience something called romantic attraction. That's right, yet another type of attraction in humans. By the way, when I use the term allosexuals, I'm referring to the people who do experience sexual attraction and are therefore not asexual. This includes heterosexuals who are attracted to the opposite sex, homosexuals who are attracted to the same sex, bisexuals who are attracted to both sexes, and any other labels in between these spectrums. In the predominant case these two attraction types align towards the same gender, they tend to intertwine with one another, making it difficult for one to differentiate between their feelings. For example, if you were to like someone in both a romantic and sexual way, There would be no real method for you to determine exactly which of your feelings are romantic and which of your feelings are sexual without fully understanding both attraction types. In order to understand what asexuality really is, it's first important to learn the differences regarding the major types of interpersonal attractions people typically develop for others. These include sexual, romantic, sensual, aesthetic, and platonic attractions. Today we will focus on the sexual and romantic types, as these two humanistic appeals are known to be, at the time of making this video, what essentially defines a person's orientation. Let's first talk about sexual attraction. Sexual attraction, in simple terms, is the desire to have sexual contact with another person. This category of attraction solely depicts the feelings of physical, sexual stimulation focused on a specific person. I say specific person because this is one of the key factors in differentiating between sexual attraction and libido, or the sex drive, which I'll be covering shortly. Because these feelings primarily develop based on one's physical attributes, it's not uncommon for allosexuals to become sexually aware towards another before experiencing some form of romantic emotional attraction. Often, based on the experiences of allosexuals, the actions enticed by sexual interests are what allows for the development of closer relationships. Who knows, maybe you've had a similar occurrence in the past? But this is only to an extent. This may not always be the case for everyone, and right now I'll just leave it at the fact that anyone, even heteroromantic heterosexuals, the official term for people who are referred to as straight, is capable of experiencing one type of attraction without the other. Alright, now, what is libido? Libido is the animalistic-like instincts humans possess in the form of sexual desire. A relevant and widely accepted explanation for the existence of libido in humans and animals is the biological desire to reproduce. Of course, one can have no libido at all. The hypoactive sexual desire disorder, or the HSDD, is the lack or loss of sexual desire, and there are many other similar disorders as well. But unlike asexuality, which is something you are born with, or I guess something you are born without, problems concerning low libido levels arise due to the external and emotional factors a person may experience in their life. These may include, but are not limited to, anxiety, past traumatic experiences, low sex hormonal levels, or personal stress, and this is also why sexual desire gradually diminishes with age. Based on the studies of HSDD, as well as similar disorders and dysfunctions, I've come to the conclusion that libido is the primary indication for sexual arousal, or the feeling of being turned on sexually. Sexual arousal may involve an escalation in breathing and heart rates, dilation of the pupils, and, of course, the increased sensitivity and blood flow to the genitals. The sensation of arousal is often provoked by sexual attraction, cognitive functioning, personal fetishes, physical stimulation, and the reception of other senses, such as olfaction, the sense of smell, or visual perception, the sense of sight. It's even possible to experience sexual arousal completely randomly, with no real explanation of the symptoms at all. The act of furthering this arousal is what leads to potential sexual behaviors. Asexuals who lack the ability to feel sexual attraction may have varying levels of libido, as does anyone else. Asexuals with a healthy libido, on the contrary to popular belief, do experience sexual arousal. However, because asexuals do not have a targeted sexual interest towards any sex, the potential libido and instincts one possesses may not typically coordinate with their emotional status like the average allosexuals does. Now let's discuss romantic attraction. The preferences that derive from romantic attraction also allow for a more accurate identification of one's sexuality. Romantic attraction, also in simple terms, is the desire to have a close emotional connection with a specific person. This can include the thoughts of wanting to partake in a relationship with someone, maybe as a significant other. Those with the ability to experience romantic attraction, alloromantics, including heteroromantics, homoromantics, biromantics, and any other labels in between these spectrums, also typically experience something called crushes within their lifetime. A crush is a temporary desire for romantic involvement with someone, and based on experiences of alloromantics, this is also something that can incentivize action that allows for the development of closer relationships. Aromanticism is another type of romantic orientation, and it's the romantic equivalent to asexuality in the fact that aromantics lack the ability to experience romantic attraction. It's not uncommon for someone to be both aromantic and asexual. It's important to note here that your romantic orientation does not necessarily correlate with your sexual identity. For the example of this study, if you are asexual, your romantic orientation can still differ from other asexuals. Basically, you can have any type of romantic orientation regardless of your sexual orientation. I'm also going to cover the sensual, aesthetic, and platonic attraction types quickly, as they are often confused with sexual attraction as well. Sensual attraction is a type of attraction based on the desire for close physical interactions. Sensual contact may include hugging, kissing, holding, or any other typical romantic gestures apart from sexual intimacy. Sensual attraction is often linked to romantic and sexual attraction, and this is why it's often confusing for people. But you can develop sensual attraction towards someone you are not romantically or sexually associated with, such as through relationships between close friends or family members. Basically, the term sensual attraction explains the deliberate physical displays of affection experienced in both romantic and platonic relationships. Aesthetic attraction is the appreciation for a person's appearance. I believe this is the form of attraction that determines one's opinions regarding the physical attributes they fancy when it comes to romantic relationships, something people call a type. Aesthetic attraction is also commonly intertwined with romantic and sexual thoughts, but similarly to the sensual appeal, one can experience aesthetic attraction independently from romantic and sexual attraction. When romantic and sexual attractions are completely wiped out of the picture, aesthetic attraction is similar to something like enjoying a nice view, with the only difference being the fact that the feeling is concentrated towards a specific person. Sexual, sensual, and aesthetic attractions are the three main attraction types one can develop based on the physical attributes of their person of interest, and it's important to note their differences to understand the idea of the distinct sexual orientations. Platonic attraction, something I'm sure everyone knows about, is defined as the desire to form a close emotional bond in the form of friendship without any romantic or sexual attraction. With that being said, it isn't uncommon for a relationship built from platonic desires to develop into other types of attractions. The criteria for platonic attraction varies greatly from person to person, and the reasoning behind the development of this type of attraction is likely due to personal preferences. A person's strong desire for a platonic relationship can often be mistaken for romantic attraction, so it's important to understand their differences as well. Now that we've gone over the general terms of sexual attraction and its misconceptions between the other types of attractions, let's sort out this whole thought process. First, attraction is something concentrated on a specific person. For example, romantic attraction is a desire to have a romantic connection with a specific person, not just a desire for a romantic relationship in general. And platonic attraction is a desire to have a platonic connection with a specific person, not just a desire for friends. There are two main types of attraction that influence the gender and orientations of a human, being romantic and sexual, and the idea of their existence may be difficult for the majority of people to understand when learning about asexuality or any other orientation. Asexuality is the lack of sexual attraction, and sexual attraction only alludes to one's desire to engage in sexual behaviors with a specific person. Asexuals are usually born with this orientation in place naturally, similar to any other orientation, and nobody can become asexual based on external factors or personal experiences alone. Despite their lack of ability to experience sexual attraction, many asexuals are as capable of developing profound and meaningful connections with others based on their potential romantic and platonic relationships. Sexual attraction is not based on a fluctuation of the libido, and a lack of sexual attraction does not involve a person's ability to become sexually aroused in any way, shape, or form. Asexuals can still become sexually aroused, and that stimulation could derive from a specific person, but they just lack the emotional ability to become sexually attracted to them. Sexual desire disorders, sexual aversion, and sexual dysfunctions are all unrelated to the potential sexual attraction one can feel towards another, and they are heavily influenced by external factors and/or libido levels. The practice of sexual abstinence, defined as the restraining of oneself from indulging in sexual behaviors, often due to religious beliefs or personal morals, is also completely irrelevant to the sexuality of a person, because sexual identity cannot be changed by choice. Asexuals have varying romantic orientations, and their status of asexuality does not necessarily limit their romantic interests in others. Like any other sexual orientation, asexuals can also be heteroromantic, homoromantic, biromantic, or aromantic, as the romantic and sexual attractions are completely separate. The asexual spectrum, or the asexual umbrella, is a series of microlabels used to identify certain types of sexualities that are closely related with asexuality and define what they exactly experience. Common types of orientations under the asexual umbrella include demisexuality, the ability to experience sexual attraction only after a deep connection has been established; lithosexuality, the ability to experience sexual attraction only when the feeling is unreciprocated; apothesexuality, referring to the status of being both asexual and sex-repulsed; and the loose term of gray sexual, referring to anyone who feels very little sexual attraction or maybe experiences attraction only in certain circumstances, among many others. Approximately 1% of the global population is asexual, or on the asexual spectrum, according to a recent Ipsos survey in 2023. I also want to introduce the concept of sex repulsion here, as this is also commonly and incorrectly assumed to correlate with the asexuality status of a person. The terms sex repulsed, sex indifferent, and sex favorable are all used to identify one's feelings toward sexual behaviors. Sex repulsed specifically refers to the feeling of complete disinterest or perhaps disgust in the idea of having sex, something that is not specifically linked to asexuality. While it seems a considerable percentage of the asexual community is either sex repulsed or sex indifferent due to their lack of sexual attraction, not all asexuals fit this criteria. Asexuals may choose to engage in sexual behaviors on their own accord based on the potential pleasure they may experience from the activity, the appreciation of their physical intimacy together with someone close to them, or the desire of conceiving children. The levels of interest someone has for sex can vary heavily due to external factors and personal experiences. So, anyone, regardless of sexual orientation, can be or become sex repulsed, sex indifferent, or sex favorable simply because there are many different variables that affect interest in sexual behavior. I hope you understand a little more about what it means to be asexual after watching this analysis. I would now like to wrap up this video with a few of my thoughts. There's no doubt that the world we live in today is heavily sexualized. Much of the current media, arts, music, everyday conversations, and even the basis of the LGBT community revolve around the idea of sexual attraction, and as asexuals, it can honestly be quite isolating. Same with aromanticism and the topic of romance. I empathize with these feelings, and I'm sure you'll inevitably find people that will accept you for who you are if you haven't already. Now, a particularly specific and rather despairing obstacle asexuals typically face when learning about their identity is the denial of asexuality's existence from others, even from the LGBT community and people who understand the basic concepts of sexuality differences. It seems that even when someone comes to accept the definitions of homosexuality, being attracted to the same gender, or bisexuality, being attracted to both genders, they're still thrown off by the possible non-existence of this type of attraction. Many believe it's just not possible, and that humans are made to have these sexual instincts, but that's just confusing sexual attraction with libido, something everyone, including asexuals, are born with. One of the main arguments within this large obstacle is the topic of age, that you are too young or immature to label yourself as asexual, or that you'll just grow out of the phase when you ultimately find that right person. This is the common thought process of an allosexual, and it may seem almost impossible to change their way of thinking because they've just never had that concept of asexuality throughout the entirety of their lives. Being asexual, or any other orientation for that matter, is not something you can change about yourself, and it certainly does not mean that you are broken. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Regarding the topic of age, or a right time to know if you are asexual, there really isn't one. Some people are sure about themselves towards the beginning of puberty. Others finally embrace this label way after their adolescent years. And of course, some asexuals don't even realize there's a proper orientation label for it at all. And that's okay too. The timing varies depending on the person, and I would say it's similar to an allosexual learning they do experience sexual attraction, or when they start having sexual thoughts for the first time. From my experience, there's no real click in realizing your asexuality, because unlike allosexuals who will inevitably start to notice their feelings, it involves the process of learning you actually lack these feelings. This could be different for other asexuals, but there's no doubt that the process of understanding asexuality can get quite difficult and confusing. The point is, age really doesn't matter. What matters is your ability to accept yourself. Asexuals, at times, may start to doubt themselves when faced with arguments regarding the possibility of experiencing sexual attraction in the future. But you know yourself better than anyone else, and it's your own judgment to make. Orientation labeling exists only for your personal comfort after all, the feeling of fitting in, and it's ultimately up to you whether you want to use it or not. It's also okay and completely reasonable to change your sexuality label later when you learn more about yourself through your own life experiences. All in all, I really hope you were able to understand just a little more about asexuality and to learn more about yourself based on the topics you personally relate to. It's important to embrace the current you for who you are, regardless of your orientation or any other aspects that seem to define you in today's society, and I hope I was able to help nurture that idea with you through this video. Thank you for watching, and have a nice rest of your day.